My name is Peter Clement. I'm essentially working for the Association of the MIT Alumni in Germany. We picked up the topic of sustainability approximately 2 years ago. We have a sustainability chapter, and we built an ecosystem. And part of the ecosystem is obviously Plattform 4.0 and all the associated organizations that you can find just across the street, and we'll talk about this a little bit more during our chat here. So let's get started. So here you see some of the partners, and it's just a selection. Yeah, if you don't know one or the other logo there, come and see me after the talk. Okay, good. So that's the agenda for today. For those of you, if you go to MIT, you're drinking from the fire hose. Yeah, so I have quite a lot, too many slides for 15 minutes, so we'll be quite quick, but still stay on the surface of things, yeah, just to set expectations a little bit. So if you want to have any more detail, any questions, we have, I think, a question-answer sessions afterwards, but that's if not enough, and you think you need a little bit more time, I'm hanging around here, just come and see me. So I talk a little bit about the why, what, and how of the framework. Those of you who are familiar with Simon Sinek's Golden Circle probably recognize the words, yeah? Then I will look a little bit, give you an overview of the framework and dive into specific aspects which are listed here. Then a roadmap, because it's work in progress, it's not finished, and you will see it, yeah? And then a call for action. So let's get started, yeah? Buckle up, and here we go. So why are we doing this? There's a lot of stuff out there around supply chain, around sustainability, framework, legislations, digital solutions, data reference models, and so on and so forth. There are a lot of puzzle pieces. But with many organizations I talk to, they see these puzzle pieces and don't know which of the pieces are relevant for me. And how do I put them together? And what does the picture then look like afterwards? Yeah? So there is a little bit of an emerging industry here going on around digital sustainability and supply chain. And the framework is supposed to help a little bit by providing a kind of set of Lego blocks, so to speak, and an instruction manual, if that makes sense, okay? But there are not many MIT alumni in Germany. Most of the guys are hanging out in the US, or second biggest cohort is probably in Asia, yeah? So we needed a partner ecosystem, not only from a man and women power perspective, but also from a diversity of thought perspective, different perspective, different knowledge bases. So we created this ecosystem, and I think that's why we are here. And let's look at the framework. It's very simple. It looks very simple, and obviously in slides you always try to make it simple, yeah, not too complex. The first block of the 4 is a use case library, and I will talk about the use case library later in the roadmap slide. If I forgot it, please raise your hand, remind me, okay? Organizations have opportunities and challenges around the sustainability transformation of the supply chain, and you can describe this in form of use cases, yeah? But then if you know your problem, your challenges, your opportunity, then you want to design the solution around it, yeah? And for the solution, there is a concept called the reference architecture. And those guys who are familiar with Plattform Industrie 4.0 and the RAMI 4.0 model know what I'm talking about. And from a visual perspective, you see already we will dive a little bit deeper in this layer of the framework, okay? Then if you know what you want to build, you need an instruction manual, how to build it. That's the solution implementation approach. And then at the end of the day, you also need to have reusable components. Yeah? You don't want to build everything from scratch. And again, there's a lot of stuff out there that you can reuse. This repository will not have the solution building blocks. We cannot do this. It's a more like a directory, what's out there in the market and what helps you to essentially implement a certain use case, a certain solution. So again, those of you who are familiar with the RAMI 4.0 model know the cube. Yeah, it's a cube model from a framework perspective. It has 3 dimensions. Solution layers. So we will go through the solution layers in a little bit more detail. Then the solution life cycle. So if you build a solution, it starts with discovery, strategy, implementation, operations, nothing new there, and the solution reach. So are you building the solution for your own organization, or do you have a solution that goes across the supply chain? Okay? So what we do now is we go a little bit more into the solution layers. Yeah, the acronym, MIT guys are always a little bit nerdy. That's why it's called S2CRA, for Sustainable Supply Chain Reference Architecture. Good. The first layer is business value. It all starts from our perspective with business value. Yeah? Today, most organizations measure value by revenue, by cost, and by profit. If you go into the sustainability space, you will have a hard time to make an argument about certain investments you need to do if you only look about revenue increase and cost reduction. So what you need is a business value portfolio. Any Dungeons and Dragons guys here in the room? Yeah, so you know then the dice if you are familiar with this one. So you need a multi-dimensional business value portfolio. The question is, what is it besides cost and revenue? What is it? Yeah, and for those of you who understand a little bit sustainability are probably familiar with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, I assume, and that's a good starting point as any to have these certain categories from a business value perspective. And here are some examples. CO2 footprint, everyone talks about CO2 footprint, but sustainability is such more. It's also about recycled material, forced labor, fair pay, and so on and so forth. And if you look at the German Supply Chain Act, or ESG, you see also the social components coming in. So also this is part of sustainability, needs to be considered. You can create value, although sometimes it's hard to quantify and measure it. So how do you find it? You make a hypothesis about the business value, and then you need to define specific objectives, and you need to define and run initiatives to implement these objectives. Yeah? So the model here, for those of you guys who are familiar with Eric Ries and the Lean Startup model, that's what it is essentially. And the idea is you iterate and you find your business model over time. You don't assume that your first hypothesis about the business value is correct. You define something, you build something, you collect data about it, the metrics, you learn, and then you adapt accordingly. One nice framework to manage objectives and initiatives, again, from business strategy perspective, is the balanced scorecard, where there's this kind of visual here in the middle. So there are a lot of tools out there in the market, not related to sustainable supply chain at all, that you can still use to implement and do a sustainable transformation of your supply chain. The next thing is people. We want to create a common language. What's in a word? People use the same name for different things, yeah? Or different names for the same thing. Confusion, miscommunication, need to work on the language. You need to build new knowledge and skills, no-brainer. Very important motivation, because your goal is to create a new mindset and also behavioral change. And as we all know, behavioral change is difficult. But if you ignore the human component out of sustainability transformation, I think you cannot be successful, at least of today. People are doing most of the thinking and the decisions. Yeah, may be different in 50 years. Let's see. Process. Industrial world is full of processes. We all know them. So you look at your existing processes, analysis, mining, not a big deal. You optimize your processes. Process re-engineering has been around for a long time. The good news is you did a lot of stuff in your factory, into your supply chain for the last 30, 40 years, tool method approaches that you can still use again. Transferable skills to drive sustainability in your global supply chains. You don't start from zero. Very important. What's new from a process perspective is metrics. If you find new ways to measure business value, obviously you need to have new metrics. And from a process perspective, you have lead time, you have cost essentially, process costs. You also need to think from a business value to objective to a metric, what are new process metrics, yeah, here as well. If you are interested in a specific process topic, there's this great book from Springer Verlag, Green Business Process Management, highly recommended. Data. Data is the new oil, correct? And if you look around here, there are many organizations who have data-driven models. From a sustainability perspective, we believe that data is not a new oil. Yeah? Sustainability data is an enabler for sustainability. I don't think, I mean, maybe you find a way, but overall, essentially, I don't think it's a big or at all revenue stream in data. What you need is standards. Again, look across the road, Gaia X, if you're not familiar, you should be. You need to have reliability of data. Data quality have always been an issue for a long, long time. And it's not only, it says your blockchain, it's not only the technology. An example, if you have defined a business value about child labor, the avoidance of child labor, this data, if child labor is used in Africa in a mine, is not available in digital form. Someone needs to put it in a system. So how do you make sure that the data that enters the blockchain is correct? So it's a process and people issue. But for example, if you drink coffee, you know the fair trade label. So how do they do it? How do they ensure fair pay in their global supply chain? There's a lot of learn also from other industries. And of course, the data spaces for the digital data exchange. Catena X from an automotive perspective, no-brainer. Technology. If you talk to different parts in the organization, the definition of technology is very, very, very different, I think. Technology can be this, the assets. It can be this, operational technology, or it can be this. At the end of the day, you need to think about all these technologies from a supply chain transformation. But if you buy a server, metal, CO2 footprint, forced labor. So you need to think about that even the technology that you use also has a supply chain with an embedded footprint, scope 3 and all these kind of things. Good. Now the business model. Supply chain are complex. You should at least on the front and the back end create a value proposition for the different stakeholders that you're interacting with. That's a model also from a startup perspective called the Value Proposition Design Canvas from Osterwalder. Now you can create a value proposition around sticking to the law about compliance. But all your competitors need to do the same, absolutely. Yeah? So why, if you need to invest anyway, why you don't invest a little bit more and create a competitive advantage for you? Once you have the value proposition, you can define or redefine or update your business model, again, collaborative in the value network, essentially. You can always build assumptions in your business model, but that's a risk. Because if your assumptions are wrong, the business model does not work. So why not talk to the stakeholders in your value network to verify your business model? Yeah? And if no one wants to do it, you can step up. You become a thought leader and lead essentially this creation, this co-creation of the collaborative business model in the supply chain. Good. One more content slide to go, and then we are done. Okay. Roadmap. We started last year with a 10-page paper. It was presented at a HIS conference in January this year. If you're interested, you can go to the HIS website and get a paper. It's 10 pages, or you can drop by and I send you the PDF. So what we did afterwards is we created a task group inside the MIT Club of Germany. We put again our partner system, and we try, because it's 10 pages, it's high level, it's an idea. So how do you flesh out the idea? So we put a global team together, an ecosystem, to work on the details of this cube and all the other components. And one component, I promised you, use cases. Where do the use cases come from? There's a research going on at MIT around digital ecosystems and sustainability until the end of the year. We will get a bunch of use cases, case studies out of that. So they guys run around globally and interview companies. So if you do something around this topic, and you're interested to be part of the MIT research and be named and published in the MIT Sloan Review, again, come and see me. I can send you the form essentially in the contacts there as well. All this stuff goes into a minimal viable product from a framework perspective. It will be open source, Creative Commons probably, and by the end of the year, that's the plan. And then next year, we look into education and adoption. And with that, thank you very much for sticking with me for these last 15 minutes. If you want to have further information or even contribute, just contact me, send me an email or see me afterwards. And then we need someone who comes on stage.
Thank you very much, Peter Clemens.